All over the world, there are airports that have long since become not just points on the map or tourist magnets, but real trials for those who sit at the controls, short runways hanging over cliffs, landings that pass just a few meters above beaches, takeoffs where the slightest mistake threatens catastrophe. Today we are going on a journey through the most dangerous airports on the planet, the ones where every landing turns into a real exam of skill. Do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you do not miss new, incredible videos. Our route begins on the Caribbean island of St. Martin, a place that has become famous not only for its paradise beaches, but also for the frightening neighborhood of the international airport with the legendary Maho Beach. Here, giant airliners come in to land so low that it seems as if they are about to brush the tops of vacationers' heads. The deafening roar of the engines seems to tear the air apart, and powerful jet blasts lift the sand and can easily knock a person off their feet. That is why each landing turns into a mesmerizing and at the same time terrifying spectacle. The runway, a little more than 2,000 meters long, runs literally a few dozen meters from the water. The aircraft is forced to descend so low that its shadow falls directly onto the beach. It is exactly here that you understand how thin the line between spectacular and dangerous can be. Sometimes it is only a few meters in the sky. Moving further across the map, we find ourselves in the Netherlands, on the island of Saba, the place where the shortest runway in the world is located. It barely surpasses the mark of 400 meters and lies between a sheer cliff and a bottomless ocean. Every landing here looks like a game of fate, where the stakes are far too high. The runway is so narrow and steep that pilots must be extremely precise. If they miss by only a few seconds, the plane can either crash into the rock wall or fall into the blue void under the wing. It is precisely this terrifying closeness to the cliff that makes Saba one of the most dangerous airports in the world. For pilots, Saba is not just an airport, but a real challenge bordering on art. And what about you? Would you dare to fly here? If the short runway on Saba makes the heart beat faster, then in Antarctica, the trials become even harsher. Here, aircraft are forced to land on a runway made entirely of ice and snow. No concrete slabs, no asphalt. Only the freezing wind, the cold whiteness, and the capricious Antarctic weather. Every takeoff and every landing here depends completely on the elements. The runway, covered with an icy crust, glistens like a mirror, and the slightest deviation can send the aircraft into a long skid and the pilot into a desperate struggle with the wind and a raging blizzard. The Antarctic airport is not just a gateway to the icy continent. It is a harsh reminder of how small a person remains in the face of nature that knows no mercy. This is definitely not a place for the faint-hearted. After the cold expanses of Antarctica, we move to a completely different world, to the bustling streets of Gibraltar. Here, the runway passes, right through a busy multi-lane highway. Yes, this is one of the few airports where aircraft and cars literally share the road. The runway crosses Winston Churchill Avenue, the main transport artery that has to be blocked every time an aircraft is preparing for takeoff or landing. For a moment, the whole city freezes, as if all its inhabitants were participants in a huge intersection where the right-of-way is decided by the air traffic controller. The danger is obvious. The slightest mistake, the tiniest delay in coordination, and the consequences can become catastrophic. That is why Gibraltar Airport evokes both admiration and anxiety at the same time. Moving further east, we find ourselves on the sunny island of Panglao in the Philippines, a place that both enchants and forces pilots to keep a firm grip on the controls. This modern airport, welcoming tourists who arrive at the turquoise sea and the snow-white beaches of Bohol, is located literally right on the coast. The runway is so close to the ocean that aircraft are forced to confront powerful gusts of wind coming from the sea. The weather here changes sharply. Sudden squalls, humid mists, tropical storms. All this reduces visibility and turns an ordinary landing into precision work, requiring maximum concentration. Panglao is an air gateway to a heavenly corner, but also a kind of exam for every pilot. At times, the beauty of this place hides threats that only the most experienced crews can handle. And now, we rise into the mountains once again, this time to the Himalayas. In Nepal, among sheer slopes and clouds, lies the legendary Lucla Airport, better known as Tenzing and Hillary. It is the gateway to Everest, and at the same time, one of the most dangerous airports on the planet. The runway here is incredibly short, only about 527 meters, and is located at an angle on a steep slope. One end of it rests against a sheer wall, the other against a bottomless abyss from which an icy wind rises. The altitude of more than 2,800 meters makes the air thin, and the unpredictable weather adds chaos. Fogs, sudden gusts of wind, cloud cover. Every visit to Lucla is a flight on the edge of possibility. The pilot cannot make a mistake even for a fraction of a second, the slightest inaccuracy, and the plane can fall down or crash into the mountain slope. Despite the danger, it is from here that many travelers begin their journey to the roof of the world. For them, Lucla is the gateway to adventure, but for the crew, it is a real survival exam. Leaving the Himalayas behind, we head to Europe, to the luxurious French Alps, where the famous Courchevel airport is located. It is known for its extreme runway, hidden among snow-covered mountain slopes. The runway, only 537 meters long, has a slope of more than 18%. It is almost a hill along which the aircraft either rushes upward or slides down during landing. The mountains around the airfield form a real labyrinth, and there is no automatic landing system here at all. Pilots arriving in Courchevel rely solely on their own skill. An error of just a few meters, and the plane can hit a rock or fall into an icy valley. Yet it is precisely this combination of danger and beauty that makes landing in Courchevel one of the most impressive sights in Europe. Leaving the Alps, we move to exotic Bhutan, a country of high mountains, Buddhist monasteries, and narrow valleys. Here, between steep slopes, lies Paro Airport, a true challenge even for the most experienced pilots. An altitude of more than 2,200 meters, mountains over 5,000 meters high along the perimeter, and a runway about 2,000 meters long make landing here incredibly difficult. Aircraft are forced to literally slip between mountain walls, performing complex maneuvers at minimal altitude. The whole world knows about Paro for one reason. Only a few pilots on the planet have a certificate that allows them to land here. The slightest misstep, and the plane can touch the slope or deviate from the runway. Paro has preserved its austere beauty for centuries, and the airport has become a symbol of utmost concentration and courage for those who control aircraft. Saying goodbye to Bhutan, we fly to the shores of Portugal, to the island of Madeira, where one of the most unusual airports in Europe is located. Its runway, about 2,700 meters long, rests on 180 giant concrete pillars that go straight into the ocean. The mountains are too close, the sea lies right next to the airport, and the gusts of wind here are so unpredictable that an aircraft can be tossed from side to side even in perfect visibility. The pilot must feel the aircraft literally with their fingertips. Otherwise, a mistake can lead to a dangerous bank angle or a failed landing. Madeira is at the same time an engineering miracle and a harsh test. For passengers, this place gives dizzying views of the ocean, and for pilots, it is an extreme test of professionalism. Leaving warm Madeira behind, we move to harsh and windy Scotland, where one of the most unusual airports on the planet is located, Barra. It is the only place in the world where aircraft land directly on a natural sandy beach, and the flight schedule is completely subordinate to the tides. The runway here is neither concrete nor asphalt. It is a flat stretch of sand about 846 meters long that exists only at low tide. As soon as the sea rises, the entire runway disappears under the water, turning into part of the noisy bay. Pilots must calculate the landing down to the minute, an inaccurate approach, and the aircraft can slide to the side and end up in icy waves or get bogged down in dense, wet sand. The wind here is gusty and humid, and the waves often come right up to the landing spot. Barra is a living example of how a person tries to coexist with wild nature rather than conquer it. Leaving the sands of Scotland behind, we head to frozen Greenland. Here, among glaciers, cliffs, and harsh winds, lies one of the most isolated airports, Narsarsuaq. The runway, about 1,800 meters long, is hidden in a narrow valley surrounded by steep mountains and eternal ice masses. The weather in these parts changes lightning fast. Sudden squalls, snow curtains, dense fog. All this makes the approach to landing resemble the most complicated navigation task. Pilots say there are no easy landings here. Each one demands complete focus. The aircraft can fall into downdrafts, icing, turbulence. Narsarsuaq is not just an airport, but a point where humans come face to face with the untamed power of northern nature. Crossing the Atlantic, we find ourselves in the heart of the Rocky Mountains in the USA, in Aspen. This airport is located in a narrow valley and lies at an altitude of more than 2,300 meters above sea level. The runway here is about 2,400 meters long, but the difficulty lies not in its length at all. Aspen is surrounded by mountain slopes that create complex air currents and rapidly changing weather. In winter, when snow lies like a dense blanket, landing turns into a real nerve test. Pilots are forced to approach through a narrow corridor between mountains, constantly correcting the trajectory, and snow clouds can suddenly cut off the view. And all this takes place against the background of stunning views of coniferous forests, snow-covered peaks, and deep valleys. Aspen Pitkin is a place where beauty and danger walk side by side. Now we head to Central America, to Honduras, where the famous Tongantin airport is located. It is rightfully called one of the most extreme in the world. The runway, about 2,000 meters long, lies in a cramped valley surrounded by mountains. The special difficulty comes from a sharp turn that the aircraft must perform almost immediately before the landing approach. A few seconds of imprecise maneuvering, and the airliner can touch the slope or miss the narrow strip of runway. Tongantin is known for demanding impeccable control of speed and altitude from pilots. The landscape around is wild and mountainous and looks incredibly picturesque. But behind this, beauty hides a constant threat. Would you risk being a passenger on such a flight? Write 1 if yes, 0 if no. Now we move to a densely populated metropolis, the Brazilian São Paulo, where Congonhas Airport is located. This is one of the most recognizable urban airports in the world. Its two short runways, a little more than 1,900 meters long, lie right in the middle of dense development. Aircraft come in to land here literally over the roofs of multi-story buildings, and takeoff is performed almost in the center of residential neighborhoods. The particular danger is the slippery runway surface during rain, and in São Paulo, downpours are far from rare. Any mistake can lead to the aircraft overshooting the runway and ending up in residential areas. From a bird's-eye view, Congonhas looks impressive. City buildings form a concrete forest into which the plane seems to plunge. Yet it is this closeness to people that makes every flight truly tense. The next stop is a legend of world aviation, Kai Tak Airport in Hong Kong, which for a long time was considered the most dangerous on Earth. Its only runway, 1331, was located right next to Victoria Harbor, and aircraft were forced to make a sharp 47-degree turn directly over densely built-up city districts. Tall buildings stood almost flush with the approach path, and gusts of wind from the bay could instantly change the aircraft's position. Kai Tak became a symbol of an era when incredibly heavy machines took to the sky, and pilots demonstrated the highest level of skill, performing the most complex maneuvers in the conditions of a real megacity. It was enough to make a tiny mistake, and the consequences would have been catastrophic. This air harbor left a vivid imprint in the memory of an entire generation of travelers. We continue our journey and move to the other end of the Indian Ocean, to the tiny island of Agatti in the Lakshadweep archipelago. This airport looks as if its runway was laid directly on top of turquoise waves. The runway, approximately 1,200 meters long, stretches in a narrow strip along the very edge of the ocean. On one side, there is a sea the color of liquid sapphire. On the other, the same endless expanse. The runway width is also limited, and the pilots have almost no extra space. This is one of those places where mistakes are measured not in meters, but literally in a few steps. If the aircraft deviates just a little to the side or gets caught in an unexpected gust of wind, there is a risk of falling straight into the ocean. But it is precisely this fragility that makes Agatti one of the most picturesque airports in the world. Those who arrive here see coral reefs, transparent water, and turquoise lagoons from the aircraft window, as if a painting comes to life at the very moment of landing. Moving back to the Himalayas, we find ourselves in Kathmandu, the heart of Nepal, where Tribhuvan International Airport is located, the only major air hub of the country. It serves as the main gateway for those who strive into the depths of the Himalayan mountains. The runway, about 3,300 meters long, lies in a narrow valley surrounded by high mountains. Despite its solid length, landing remains extremely difficult. Pilots are forced to perform unusual, precise approaches, since a straight-in trajectory is impossible here. The mountains press against the available space from all sides. The wind in Kathmandu changes sharply and unpredictably, and cloud cover can appear literally within seconds. This creates danger during approach, especially considering the density of development in the valley. Nevertheless, Tribhuvan gives travelers a truly unique spectacle. When the aircraft enters the valley, majestic Himalayan peaks wrapped in clouds suddenly rise all around. It feels as if the plane first dives into the mountains and then gently slips into the city. We make another leap into Europe, to Austria, where in the beautiful Tyrolean Valley, Innsbruck Airport is located. It is known not only for its picturesque mountain views, but also for being considered one of the most difficult airports for landing in Europe. The runway is squeezed between high alpine ridges. The wind here constantly changes, creating hidden whirlwinds and air pockets. Pilots have to watch every meter because they must approach in conditions of a narrow air corridor where neither mistakes nor delays are forgiven. In winter, the situation becomes even more complicated. Low cloud cover, snow, and variable gusts of wind force crews to work at the limit of their capabilities. Yet despite all this, Innsbruck is one of the most stunning airports in Europe. Passengers see snow-covered peaks, deep gorges, and glittering slopes almost at arm's length. This is a place where beauty and danger intertwine particularly closely. Leaving Innsbruck, we return once again to Madeira to look at another aspect of the famous Funchal airport, the very one whose runway overhangs the Atlantic Ocean. This airport has repeatedly become a topic of discussion among pilots all over the world. Winds coming simultaneously from the ocean side and from the mountains can collide right on the approach path, causing strong turbulence. Every approach here is accompanied by the most precise corrections. On one side, there are sheer cliffs. On the other, an open water surface. The runway ends abruptly, and the pilot must touch down precisely at the designated point, without overshooting and without slowing too long. Despite all the danger, Funchal is one of the most impressive airports. When the aircraft touches the ground, an incredible picture appears before your eyes. Turquoise sea, orange rooftops, and powerful cliffs, like a frame from a movie. Thus, our journey through the most dangerous airports in the world comes to an end. Places where every flight turns into a trial, and every landing makes the heart beat faster. Some of them frighten with sheer cliffs and short runways, others with unexpected gusts of wind or streets that cross the aircraft's trajectory. But it is precisely here, in these points on the map, that true stories of courage, skill, and unforgettable beauty are born. If you were offered to choose one of these airports, which one would you dare to fly into? Write it in the comments, and do not forget to subscribe. There are even more incredible journeys ahead.